There we go. Right, so welcome back, Colette.
Hi
We
Eddie,
have
how
we
you
have
doing?
Colette Walker here on the show. As you already know, she is the leader of the Independence for Scotland Party, and we'll talk about that in the second half of today's podcast. Today, want to catch up with Freeports and the special economic zones, because I mean, as you've mentioned before, and I'm sure more and more people are aware of, this really is a clear and present danger. We'll get into some more details as we go along. And you have a very, very, very busy schedule, as we know, Colette. Would you be able to just maybe give us a wee update and stuff on what you've been doing and where your primary concerns are now, or any new information that you found out that will give us all more to worry about?
Well, I don't really want to worry people, but it can be quite frustrating finding out information and not really knowing what you're going to have to do regarding it, because we can't get the elected representatives to actually, answer our questions. But we plod on. So yes, we had a very busy 2024, and leading up to 2025, before we took our Christmas break, we decided to look into the public meetings that we were going to be doing this year for 2025, and anything else over and above that. So we have got public meetings every month this year, except the month of May and I think December. I think we don't have one in December, but the reason why we're not having one in May is because we've got a few things on that month as well: rallies, stalls, and the SSRG are holding their conference in Dunfermline, so which will hopefully be having a stall and possibly a speaker slot there. So we are going to be very busy in May. So we thought, well, we won't bother having a public meeting there, but we're all around the country. We've got our first meeting in Perth a week on Sunday at the Salutation Hotel. That's well publicised on all our social media forums, so X, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky.
Mm-hmm.
So all the information's there, and it's through Eventbrite. So still time to book places there. But we're going to new places that we haven't been to before, such as Peterhead, North Lanarkshire, and we're even going down to Dumfries as well this year. And it's not really necessarily, all these areas aren't all about free ports or necessarily special economic zones as such. A lot of the places have got what's classed as city regional or city growth deals, as some of them like to call them. So at the present moment, we're working on our meeting in Perth, which has got the Tay city regional deal. So we're basically looking into where the public money is going, and again, is going into the private sector. Mm-hmm. And we're doing we always look at the comparisons to what they're promising regarding, as we all know, whether it was the free ports, etc. They always promise lots and lots of job opportunities, high paid, professional, quality jobs. So we're a lot of the time we're looking into the jobs that are promised. Have any of them actually met any of their targets, which they haven't as yet? And how is it actually affecting the actual overall community? Is the money that's been seemingly, this word, invested by the Westminster government and the Scottish government? But you have to remember that the money that they say that they're investing, that's your money, it's your public purse.
I know they always say they, don't they?
Yeah, it's,
it's
their
us,
money. Yeah. It's the Scottish government and Westminster government are giving. Yeah, they're giving you our money, our public money. So you have to remember that. It's not their money, and there hasn't been the consultations, or people really don't know what's going on. So we're looking into things like what's happening with the private sector. Is it enhancing the unemployment rate? within the area? Is it enhancing the standard of living of people within that area? Is it enabling the local councils within the areas to actually increase their public services for people? And guess what? The majority of the time it's no.
No, of course
It
not.
really isn't. They're investing tens of millions of pounds into something or other, and then you look at the budget cuts for the local council, and that it doesn't tally up, Eddie. It just doesn't tally up. You would have thought, since this was supposed to be so good and such a good investment for the local area, why is there still 1 in 4 children living in poverty? And not just families that are unemployed. These are working families some of the time, and the majority of the time it's actually the working poor. So
of course,
it doesn't, these things don't tally up. And just today, again, doing a bit of research, I put up on social media, and I think I sent it over to you, about the Aviation Academy.
Oh, yeah.
So again, that was a
20
combination
million?
of £28 million between the Scottish Government and Westminster for this Aviation Academy. But talking to a few people and then doing a wee bit more investigating myself, there had been an aviation college in Dundee that opened up in 1968, and there was a man called Tony Banks who seemingly bought it over in 2021, and it's been closed ever since. It's still permanently closed. If you look at the website, it's permanently closed. So in 2021, coincidentally, and again, this is something we're going to have to look into a wee bit further, because this is only today that I've been looking into this. That's roughly about the time the Tay City deal was signed by the people involved from the Scottish and UK government. So
that does sound a bit coincidental.
Yeah, so I don't really understand, we don't understand what that's all about. So that needs more investigating. Again, the job prospects are saying, but even just concentrating in the Tay City deals, but again, this is throughout all, like the Freeports, all the jobs that are promised. There's 6,000 jobs promised within this. Now, Tayside covers, Dundee, Perth, Kinross, and Fife. So it's covering quite a big area. So they're saying 6,000 jobs. But in all of the councils within that area, their unemployment rate is roughly, on average, about 3.3%. It's not a high unemployment rate. But within that unemployment rate, there will be quite a lot of people that are classed as unpaid carers, etc. as well, that won't be able to, possibly go out and do a full-time job. But are these people then qualified to do the jobs that are basically part of this initiative as well? Where's the training? So, and again, like with Grangemouth, with everything that's happening with Grangemouth, there was we all hear about the just transition, and that's never happened. They haven't done the training or the just transition to the workers, so that they could then retrain from gas and oil into renewables, etc. But part of the Falkirk growth deal that we had a public meeting on last year, the Forth Valley College is part of that initiative, and they got so much money to do training things. Now they're talking about things like getting the workers that are going to be made redundant to do possibly a course within the Forth Valley, but the workers won't get paid for that. That's not part of the just transition deal. So I don't know how any of this public money going into the private sector is actually helping matters. And look what's happening. We've said about the Freeports, about how it's privately owned. Yes, it's a lease for up to 25 years, but it's private companies coming in. And we gave the comparison to the likes of Thames Water about, it's more about the stakeholders and profit making, not really about the public or the people in the area. They're really not invested in them. And just with what's happening with Grangemouth, it just shows you that the two people that own Grangemouth, Jim Ratcliffe and China Petroleum, they're not really bothered about the people. They're interested in the profit. So this is happening just within Grangemouth. Can you think now what's going to happen when you have deregulation within all, like, Cromarty Firth and the Firth of Forth, when this is actually happening now with Grangemouth? It just shows you that private people that are privately run companies, the government can only really probably buy them out or whatever, but if they want to sell and they want to go and do something else, then they're going to do it because it's what's better for them, not the people within the company.
I've always thought this is always why it's always struck me as being, I suppose the word would be insidious, this whole idea. I remember from a younger age, I think it was Chomsky, and I remember, I can't even remember what book it was, but I remember he was talking about MIT, and even like Silicon Valley to a degree. A lot of it is subsidized, a lot of it comes from taxpayers' money. And of course, if there's, and lots of money gets wasted, there's lots of research done, nothing comes of it. And so the public takes that, has to pay for that. But then, of course, when they get something that works, like the internet or something, it's sold off to private companies. So us, the public, are actually, we're paying for this research and stuff. And if anything does come of it, it's repackaged and sold back to us. So, I mean, would I be right in saying, this is what strikes me about free ports or special economic zones and stuff. It's just all the same. It's all about maximizing profit and stuff like this. I think one of the questions I was going to ask you was, so when you do get these zones and stuff, whatever they may be, will that detract from other areas? I mean, would you be able to explain that? How would that work? Because I think some of the literature I've read would say that some people would argue that the special economic zones only work within the area, and they just move around the figures rather than like create more jobs and stuff like that. Is it? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, it's been reported repeatedly. When Thatcher brought what was classed as the free zones and the enterprise zones, when Thatcher brought them in, Cameron actually banned them and stopped them 2012, 2013, because they were proven not to do any benefit to the community. They didn't create the jobs. I've got several reports, and David Powell, who we've done a lot of work with, who lives in The Hague, and he's done a pile of work. But there's loads of reports back from even when we had the enterprise zones and the free zones, but that's when we were under EU regulation still. So they, when they were, but even then, when they're under EU regulation, they didn't optimize the economy. They didn't have the economy growing in any way. There was the jobs that were promised, they never ever were matched at all. If you're talking about maybe a third or possibly less, but again, it's not new jobs. They move people around, so they're not actually creating all. These aren't just new jobs that they're creating. They're actually moving people around. But the problem being now with what we have now with the free ports, etc., is, and it was all part of the Brexit plan, is that they are deregulated. And we heard a lot of people, the likes of Nigel Farage and a lot of the Conservative Party, etc., talking about deregulation during the leading up to the general election campaign. The general election, the whole campaign, and up to the day of voting, you heard in a lot of the debates about deregulation. nobody really picked up on what that actually meant. We kind of knew what that meant regarding the economy and businesses not being set terms and conditions that they had to abide by, and otherwise they would get penalties or whatever with the government. So they were talking about deregulation, but they weren't really emphasising what that actually really entailed, and we all know why, because people, well, especially in Scotland, we should have public ownership of all our stuff. So it's been very well reported that Freeports, etc., do not create the jobs, and they basically work within their own law. They don't have to work within the law of the land that they're situated in. And again, you don't, because of the incentives to get, the 10-year business tax relief, etc., etc. They're just looking to maximise their profits, and the shareholders. They're not really that interested in. It's just to get the contract. They'll promise the earth. Sadly, it's a bit like during the general election when Labour promised the WASPy women, they promised to save Grangemouth. We all know what Labour promised, and look what's happened now. 7 months on, look at how badly they have let down not only the people of Scotland, but throughout England as well, and Wales. So sadly, they just put these things in to actually make the contract sound good, and then once they get it, they're on their own. So it is a concern, and especially now with even all the private companies that are now basically asset stripping Scotland for our natural assets. The amount of wind turbines that are getting put up, the amount of solar farms that are now getting put up, and people go, oh, but they're going to create jobs and and renewable and carbon emissions and net zero targets. Has your energy bills went down any at all? And this is the problem between publicly owned and privately owned. All these, they're taking our natural energy, our natural resources, and then it's getting siphoned down to Westminster, down to England, and then we're having to buy it back at a premium rate. So we're not actually. That's a scandal here in Scotland. That one, when you look at the amount of wind turbines that we have here in Scotland compared to England, we've got about 3 times as more wind turbines than what England or Wales have. We're not getting, not one household in Scotland's getting a benefit from that.
No, of course not.
I posted about the new solar farm in Perthshire, because we're dealing with obviously Perth, the Tay City deal, that just basically went live in last March or last year, and it's 55,000 solar panels.
Jeez.
And it can give energy to 3,500 households. But again, we're not seeing any benefit to that, to our energy bills. But secondly, is the land that they're putting these solar panels on, was that good arable land? Could it be used to actually have sustainable, local grown food for the local community and actually support the farmers? But everything's done very secretively. There isn't an awful lot of transparency, and that's why we are having to really dig into finding
exactly.
these things out.
Moral or morality and ethics goes out the window, like you said, when it all comes down to profit. What? I mean, like, you really get into the details and you really know your onions, Colette. Can I just ask, what is it like for you? I mean, for me, when I just take an aggregate of all this stuff that goes on between the public and the private, I see it exactly like you just said. You know, like Scotland's assets are being stripped, because that's the way capitalism is these days. We strip whole countries now. And look where we are with Trump these days. I mean, look at look at the way it goes on. So when you look at all these facts and figures, it's no surprise to me that like, these things go on, and they're relentless with whether it's trade deals or special economic zones or something that asset strips, local and and how or where can you see avenues or ways, real world applications whereby you can push back against this? Because I don't mean to be pessimistic, but to me, it always seems like we're on the back foot, when it comes to pushing back and stopping privatization and our lands and our labor and everything else being used and the profits being taken out of the area and enriching the usual suspects. Is there anything that you can see or something practical where you can push back against that?
Well, I think, first of all, I think more people have to really be educated and actually start opening their eyes and opening their ears to what's actually going on. And we've said so many times, there's just so much political apathy out there just now. But I think, again, this has been done on purpose. Because if you take your eye off the ball and you're not paying attention to what's happening within, whether it's this, the Scottish government or Westminster, they can get away with whatever they want. And it's only until possibly it's starting to hit you in the pocket and you say, well, how did that happen? That's when you weren't paying attention. That's when you weren't, I know social media has its really negative points, but it can also be very good to get information to people. But it was when you turned your back, you weren't paying attention, because, and rightly so, to a degree, that you had just given up on politicians on the news, because it's so biased one side. You really have, again, it's really up to you to then start looking for other methods and other formats to get the information you're looking at, not just the biased point of view. So it really is honestly, it's up to the individual to start doing a wee bit more investigating and a wee bit more research. But I think now, this is why this all started, really, why the Freeports campaign really started up, was because a couple of people, kind of knew what was going up in the Commonwealth and the Fifth, and like, right, what's going on here? This isn't right. And they started doing a wee bit more research, and they're like, we need to do something about this. And this is how the campaign came about. And it has, and again, when I first joined it, which was very early days, I didn't know too much about it. Every day was a school day for me, and it's basically a school day for all of us, really, to be fair, every day. But people weren't really paying attention for quite a wee while. But I would say for the past 9 months, 10 months or so, people are really starting to, get a bit wiser to what's actually going on, that their money's, because again, I think they're realising, like council tax is, going up again. They're not able to get their bins collected, it could be once a month. Not that it affects me so much, except when I'm actually crossing the road, but all the potholes and all the rest of it. But it's when they see that their standard of living is actually not getting any better, and they think, well, why have they not got any money? Well, it's all went in the private sector. It's been wasted, it's been squandered, it's been used for something. But again, it's the lack of transparency, because these things aren't on the news, Eddie. You never
No, I
hear
know,
anything
yeah.
about this on the news. You know, you might see the likes of, you know, at the end of last year, just before we had our meeting in Falkirk for the fourth the growth deal there. You had it was actually on the news, Kate Forbes with Ian Murray signing the deal, talking about this £100 million investment.
Yeah.
But again, it's that word. It's the language they're using. It's the investment. It's the job opportunities. It's the infrastructure. But they don't talk about actually the stuff that's actually going on, or the budget cuts to the council, and the council actually have to pay money towards these initiatives. So it's coming out of their budget, and it's coming out of our Barnett consequentials overall. Because
of
when
course.
they say they class it as the UK government, I say Westminster or the English Parliament. But when they say the UK government has given so much money, and the Scottish government have given so much money, that's not theirs, you know, that's ours. But we're not getting we're not getting consulted about that. We're having to dig through all the, you know, and again, like all the deals, you know, there's the I've put them, you know, I always put links up onto any of my posts so that they know where I've referenced things from, and I'm giving them the facts from the documentation. But all these documents are sometimes hundreds of pages long. And guess what? I don't think very many people are going to be going through this. Of
course not, no.
You know, they're just not going to do it, Eddie. And again, that's on purpose.
That's bureaucracy. I call it sludge. I have a word for that. I call it, and sludge just grows.
Yes.
Like entropy.
So you can imagine that we've been doing a lot of public meetings. You know, we've done 9 public meetings since August 2023. And as I say, we've got 10 this year, doing 9 this year again. Sorry, 9 this year. I can't believe we're into February already. And you know, but for every area and every council, we're doing all this research, and we have to look through all this information, all this bump that
I know, yeah.
And it's, you know, you feel completely brain dead by the end of it, but that is, again, it really is on purpose, because the average person is not going to say, oh, I'm going to look at the Tay City regional deal and see what's that, and go through 60, 80 pages.
I think if we had a better political system as well, work like you're talking about here should be paid for by the taxpayers, because this is in their benefit. So let me sort of drag you back there a bit. So if I've got the picture right here, and I'll tell you what, it is the impression I get. You know, that little history, like what you're talking about, is like no one really notices things until it starts to affect them. Yeah. But there's so many things out there, you know, these days, and people have so many worries and so many stresses and strains with the fast lives we live these days. So in some respects, you know, it's perfectly normal to just suddenly be hit by these things because you haven't been paid attention. I mean, you might be like short of money and stuff, so you'll be a little bit more observant of stuff like this. But like I said, this insidious thing of where it just keeps coming and rolling, you know, at you all the time. So would you say then as well that this is a dangerous way of doing things? Because if you at least tackle certain subjects here and there, and you get some successes and you manage to roll things back, then that might placate people a bit. But if you go along and you're constantly being oppressed all the time, you know, you're going to maybe get to this point where there's just a collective, I've had enough. You know, I mean, are we getting to this point, or are we getting to a bigger point than say we was even under, or are we coming to like that, like we may have been with Thatcher, where we got to riots and stuff? I mean, do you see that in the future if it carries on the way it is?
Well,
it's constant.
I like, yes, it can be. It can be quite depressing, and I can get quite angry at times with what's happening, and it's quite frustrating that, you know, there's a lot of it is out with, you know, our control, because you know, we're working against two governments, so to speak. But what I really want now, and especially leading up to next year, because there is an election coming up next year. There is an election. But what I'm hoping, and a bit like the poll tax, campaign, etc. I'm hoping now, and I try and see the positives of things. Yes, it can be quite depressing for people, and again, there is a lot of apathy just now, which we've covered. But I really am hoping that now more people are aware and becoming more aware, and they're actually talking to more people. They're paying attention. They're commenting on what's happening. That hopefully this, on a positive note, that this will actually galvanise the movement, so that when next year they will be looking for the people that are actually fighting for our country, and know that we can't allow the, we need the majority of what I call liberation MSPs within our parliament, so that we will fight for the country, depending on the state that our country is in politically, because there's a lot going on. But we need to have as many MSPs elected to our parliament that are going to fight for Scotland, and get rid of this asset stripping, and actually get back to the way Scotland should be, and the people of Scotland own the assets and make the decisions, because that's what sovereign Scots really should be doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our right as sovereign Scots. So I would hope that once people do hopefully maybe get a wee bit angry, and they get to understand what's actually happening, and what's happening with their money, and what's not happening with their money, that they would actually start to galvanise the movement, and actually entice, and I urge everybody to register to vote, and use your vote. Don't just stay at home. Use this to actually, even if it is a protest vote against privatisation and asset stripping, make that your goal, that you are not going to just sit at home and continue letting the shareholders and the private sector take your money, and your standard of living is getting worse and worse, and you're getting poorer and poorer. And it's only, do you actually really want your local council to actually become privatised by a corporation that then you're going to have to pay even more for all your services, because you will be what's classed as a customer?
Exactly.
We don't want to wait until what's happening down in England, when there's so many councils becoming bankrupt and are already bankrupt. Don't let it get that far. If you're having, let it be a protest vote, but for the right reasons, to actually save Scotland.
Yeah, listen, that's really interesting. That's really interesting, because of course this is where this and the constitutional and the constitutional issue dovetails, isn't it? Because I mean, there was no hyperbole, no exaggeration to say it. I'm sure anybody who pays attention will agree that Scotland is being asset stripped in various ways. Some of them we've mentioned now. And so the idea then of independence doesn't mean it's a cure-all or a panacea, but we're going to need at least that opportunity. Otherwise, like you said, we will just become a customer or a number. I mean, we are to a degree already. I think we're pretty much on our last legs. I mean, what is the point in inheriting at some point in the future an independent Scotland that has been stripped of all its resources?
But this is, again, it's done on, this is getting done on purpose, because if you think about the lies that were told leading up to the 2014 referendum, the scaremongering about people's pensions, the EU, and all these different things that was said leading up to 2014. They're doing this, and they're actually not hiding it anymore. They're really not hiding the fact that they're taking every little bit of our natural resources
brazen.
They really are brazen. They
Mhm.
really are not. I am sometimes actually quite astonished how brazen they actually are, and that's the right word for it. Because whereas before it was getting done and you didn't really notice, but now
Yeah.
it's there in your face. That sometimes you have to think out the box about what's actually happening. People say, "Oh, like solar farms are that's really good for renewables, and the climate and all the rest of it." But then when you chip away at actually what's happening, who's benefiting from this?
Mm-hmm.
It's not us. It's just it's the
Well,
company,
this
it's the
is it.
private sector.
We always say most of us, the majority of us will say that's a failure, but there's a small percentage of us go that's a great success.
Well,
We've
that's
always
it.
got to keep
Yeah,
that in
oh, that's
mind.
great. Yeah, it might well be great if it was publicly owned in Scotland and every household was then going to have, okay, you possibly can't have, like zero fuel bills, because obviously you still have to maintain, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's publicly owned, things still have to be paid for, to be maintained, etc., etc. So there is obviously going to be a cost there, but not to the extent of, we always talk about Thames Water. Look at
Mm-hmm.
the disaster of Thames Water. Are they
Oh,
looking
no.
after the people that they're supposed to be providing a service for? No, they're not. The shareholders are getting millions of pounds worth of bonuses, but
Mm-hmm.
but they're billions of pounds in debt.
Absolutely.
And they're not looking after their infrastructure, which again we hear about all the time, and people's quality of water, the rivers, etc., the pollution. It's not been looked after.
No, of course not.
So again, there is good and there is bad, but at the present moment, this is done on purpose so that, one, it shows that, again, getting rid of Grangemouth, we won't have a
Mm-hmm.
refinery, but there's still going to be the oil and gas licenses that have been
Mm-hmm.
approved by
Yeah.
the previous UK government with the Tories. But all that oil and gas is now going to get refined down in England.
Yeah.
So this is all about the economics. We all know that the GERS figures are just made up ideology. It's just plucked
Mm-hmm.
from, it's nonsense. But it will make us economically look a lot poorer
Yeah. Like a
than
basket
what
case.
we actually are, because everything's getting siphoned down by the private sector
Mm-hmm.
down south, and we're not gaining from that whatsoever. And the more privatisation that happens in England as well, the less public service money that they're having to put out, then we
Mm-hmm.
will get that percentage ourselves. They'll say, well, we're not using
Yeah.
that much money for public services, and because we get a percentage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, our Barnett consequentials, our block grant is going to get depleted, which then again, in return, our public services within your local council is going to be affected dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a negative downward spiral for us. So this is
Yeah.
why
Race to the bottom. Yeah.
I am hoping that when people start to understand that they'll actually start to galvanise the what was the independent vote.
I suppose I would certainly argue that. So what you said about education, it's so much boils down to this. I think you're absolutely spot on, and probably maybe then this is could be where the real big problem lies in. It's really hard to get a sufficient traction or get a tipping point, because we have this information, like we know Scotland's being asset stripped. It's undeniable if you look at the information. It's not like it's hidden, like you said, anymore.
No.
It's there for everybody to see. So what is the problem then? Why are we allowing ourselves to be continually asset stripped? It's because, like you said, no one's informed. No one's getting the proper education. And the reason why that is because all the mainstream channels, which unfortunately are still watched, and the mainstream papers and everything are still taking too much, people still take too much information of them. And even down to the social media level, we can see what's happening now. Even that, as you know, is getting more and more restricted and stuff like that. So that seems to be the real battle, because surely if more people were educated, then more people would make better decisions, or certainly have a better opinions of stuff, or more qualified opinions of stuff, and move on. But Would you say that's right then? How would we?
Yeah,
How
I
do we
think this is why it's really important that, you know, people come along to the likes of the public meetings that we're holding. And, you know, there's other campaign groups that are, you know, the likes of, you know, Save Loch Lomond and things like that. You know, you know, there's all these different groups that are trying to save Scotland and their local areas within Scotland, and the local businesses. They're trying to save them from the private sector and from, you know, basically the local businesses and communities been decimated because of these big private companies.
Yeah.
So it's really important, I think, that you do come along to public meetings. You know, it's only taken up maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours of your day. It's not a long time, and we're really wanting to hear from people and people's opinions. Every meeting, and I think we've spoken about this before, but, you know, every meeting we write to every local councillor, MSP and MP and ask them to come along. And I would say, you know, we've had one MP that's came along to one of our meetings in Dunfermline, and then we've had a few councillors, maybe 1 or 2, 3 councillors maybe attend a meeting, but they actually come to our meeting to actually find out what's actually going on in their own doorstep. They're actually coming to find out from us and actually take away questions that we've compiled. One of the guys that work that's on the team, you know, he's compiled a whole list of questions, and, you know, a couple of the councillors have actually taken them away to ask local, you know, their fellow colleagues some of those questions to get answers, because they don't know. They knew nothing about it. So we're really, you know, we are really looking for elected representatives to come and actually speak to their constituents. That's what they're there. That's what they're there to do. You know, that's what they get paid to do. And I think it's only right that it shouldn't really be up to us to give the information to as much as what we find out and how much we know. But I think it would be really good if the local elected representatives would come and actually address the constituents and actually get that information out. And, you know, if it was something positive, that would be great. But I think, one, it's a two-way thing. They have to hear from the constituents and we have to hear from them. But it just seems to be the people are coming to the meetings and they do have questions and they have opinions, but they're a lot of the time we can't answer all the questions because we don't have the answers either, you know, because you find something, just like I talked about the Aviation Academy, just looking into that through the actual city deal documentation, it's now giving me more questions than what I've got answers. So this happens all the time, Eddie. You come across something and then you start analysing it, and then you've got more questions than what you originally is. So it's, you know, but people do want answers. But I do hope that people then use this next year to act, because we really can't allow this to continue. And with the likes of, you know, the Reform Party and Nigel Farage, etc., that was all part of the Brexit plan. You know, I mean, he's the Brexit man, as you might as well put it. You know, do you really want that in our Holyrood that he can actually make an influence on even more privatisation and more asset stripping of Scotland? But they're doing that to make the economic case weaker for Scotland. But when you look at overall, even in England, and you hear Rachel Reeves talking about economic growth. Now, they've had free ports and special economic zones for about 5 years longer than us, because it was like literally right after Brexit. They really started putting these in place. And when in those 5 years have you actually heard, and I know that they call it the UK, but when have you heard that we've had a significant economic growth? So have these free ports and special economic zones that they had at that time just in England, we didn't have them here, they weren't live here. Have they in those 5 years actually made the headlines significant economic growth in England or in the UK. Because if England had this major economic growth, it would be plastered everywhere. And it's like,
it certainly would.
It would be like, it's what, about 0.1% economic growth. So what are these free ports actually doing or what benefit are they actually doing? They're not giving us the economic growth that seemingly, and I don't think the unemployment rate or anything has actually really changed. So again, where's the jobs? Who's taking the jobs? So again, more questions than answers, but I would let you know, it's certainly not given the economic growth that they're supposed to be doing.
No, it certainly isn't. And like you said, I mean, even if it was 0.1%, they would be shouting it from the rooftops and trying to make a big thing. So yeah, I mean, I suppose it's really, to me, it's pretty simple there. It's like profits go to the usual people, jobs for the boys, what corruption, whatever you want to call it. It's all that, and it's all sold as guys. You know what it's like in every single area. I remember we had it here in Fort William, over a few things, a smelter and stuff, and we had the steel company Tata and stuff, and and all the word and all in the local press and the papers and the councils and everything, it's jobs, 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 and I know I've been there before. It's like, oh, and it all just falls away, But when it's going on, you're not allowed to dissent. You'll get frowned upon. You'll be like, what? You don't want jobs in the area? Oh my God,
Oh, we get that as well.
Oh,
About, when they talk about, like, there's another solar farm in Ayrshire that I posted last year about, and again somebody was saying, oh, but it's going to create so many jobs. Well, how many jobs is it going to create? And again, these aren't just small farms, Eddie. This is land that's roughly about the size of 12 football pitches.
Yeah, that's big.
They're big. Now, I hate, like, so we've got the one in Ayrshire, we've got the one in Perthshire. But again, doing the research that we've been doing into all these different renewable initiatives, I just found out at the weekend, looking into the solar farms, that there's 60 solar farms that are up for planning approval leading up to 2030. Now, when you say 2030, you go, that's ages away. Actually, I thought, that's only 5 years. We're in 2025 now. I actually forget that we're actually in 20. So when I read 2030, and then I realised it's only 5 years away. That's no time at all. So 60 other solar farms are up for approval in Scotland alone.
And how many is there now? Do you know roughly how many is there? Or
I'm not too sure the actual amount of solar farms. I do know about the one in Ayrshire, the one in Perthshire the one in Perthshire
seems like a lot. 60.
It's live. The one in Perthshire is live. The one in Ayrshire is still to be constructed, as far as I know. But it's been approved. But with that, the planning, the Scottish government are looking into the proposal of 60 solar farms before 2030, which is quite scary. And again, as I said about the wind turbines, the onshore and offshore, like Scotland overall has got right now over 4,200 wind turbines.
Mm-hmm.
In England, they've only got 1,000 and odd.
Jeez, in the whole of England, wow.
And Wales is about.
That's because they don't want them, because they can get it produced here and we'll send it down to them. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's all these things that you have to look in, but it is quite scary that there's all these things that are going on people know nothing about. And again, we are looking at we have to turn it on the head, like I said earlier on. The land that these solar farms are they going to be multi-usage? Are they going to have things growing on them at the same time? Will they still have animals? Will they, I think one of them said that they're going to still have sheep on them so they can eat the grass and keep it maintained or whatever. But could this arable land be used for something else? Could we be supporting the farmers with this investment money that they keep talking about? So there's a lot more investigating to do to exactly what's happening. Are the farmers, because they're not making profits, are they taking, are they getting backed into a corner, or is it people that own the land and the farmers that are just renting the land? Like, there was a woman on a TV program, and it was down in England, but again, it will just as easy happen here, that she rents the farm. So she's the farmer. She rents the farm from the person that owns the land, and he's literally just given her month's notice because he wants to sell the farm for. And again, it was to do with solar farms. And I thought that's actually quite incredible that we were actually starting to look into solar farms and wind turbines and some. And then the next day I put on the TV, and this woman saying that he's wanting to sell the land. So she's now basically lost her job, her home,
her livelihood,
everything, because the owner. So we don't know, again, is a lot of this land, is it owned and the farmers are renting it out? No. So it's not a very good situation to be in when there's not that transparency there either.
No, that's that history repeating itself. I mean, it goes without saying, whoever or whatever entity owns the land in the modern context, well, however they're going to get whatever they'll get the most money for, they'll do it. Doesn't matter whether there's sheep or human beings on the land. It will be sacrificed, as you know. Yeah. Can I just ask you, Colette, then as well, because your party is very strong on all what we're talking about here, aren't we? Education and more accountability with democracy and stuff like that. Could you just tell us what's happening, say, with your party at the moment? Can you give us a bit more of a description of what's happening and stuff? And I know it's still over a year away and stuff, but like you said, it's a very important election next year. I'm sure you'll agree, one way or another. It's going to take in the temperature, and let's hope we're fit when we have a temperature taken.
Well, I think people need to start getting their steps in and get a bit fit, because I think we're going to need a lot of soldiers on the pounding the streets and chapping on doors and talking to a lot of people. I think this is this really should be as big as the 2014 referendum, where people were out all the time. Next year we thought 2021 was crucial, and that's why I set up ISP. Didn't go the way we wanted, but this is the crucial election next year, because the way things are going, then I don't want it to be that we won't then have a Scotland to fight for afterwards. We need we need to fight for our country, and this is the time that we really have to do it. So I am now taking my campaign Freeports off, and I'll put on my ISP.
Well, just before you take that off, but so can I just ask, because to me, this whole asset stripping, this whole process of what is going on, right before our eyes, that's going to have to be a part of the initiative, isn't it? Of the process of getting involved with ISP and saying, look, let's everyone see what's happening here. We need to do something about it.
Yeah, I think so. With the Freeports or any of the campaigns that are happening to kind of save any of the communities in Scotland, I think the main thing, and it happened in the general election, especially the general election in July. There was quite a few hustings that were put on, and we were making sure that people from our team, the Freeports team, or people that were quite knowledgeable about the Freeports, that actually went along to the hustings and asked the candidates questions. And then if they didn't know anything, if they couldn't answer questions about Freeports or the special economic zones, etc., then sorry, you're not getting our vote, because this is the only way now that we will recognise who's really going to put their head above the parapet and actually put their head and say, we're here to save Scotland, and we're not standing for this anymore. And we've done our research, we know what's happening. We're not just giving false promises, we're not scaremongering. We've actually, up until when the election happens next year, the Freeports campaign will have been going for a good couple of years, nearly 3 years. So as I say, it's really important that, one, people get educated, but they actually start, and again, as I said earlier on, start looking into, people might go to a ballot, go to the polling station, get their ballot paper out, and they'll look for an emblem of a party that they recognise, and they'll put a cross against that. But they won't necessarily really look into maybe the person that's standing, the actual candidate themselves. What do they stand for? What do they know about? Because, ask them go to hustings. It's really important that you do that wee bit of investigating yourself.
Yeah.
Get to know if they understand what's actually happening, and if they are going to speak out about it. A bit like, I am not any fan of Labour, as you know, but, at least the likes of Brian Leishman, who is the MP for Alloa and Grangemouth, he's actually been speaking out against it, what his party's done, and Anna Sarwar lying on one of the leaders' debates leading up to the election, when he said that there was going to be hundreds of millions of pounds invested by Labour government to save Grangemouth and save the jobs. Brian Leishman's actually putting his head above the parapet. I'll give him that. I don't think he's going to be able to achieve so much. He's maybe one person out of a whole party. But again, at least then that he's standing up for what he said during the election. He didn't just say it for.
He has some moral integrity.
He did. So with the likes of ISP at the present moment, at the present moment, we are now looking into thinking about our campaign. What is our campaign going to look like? What is our message going to be? That's really important. Again, when we set up ISP, we set up the strategy for and try to educate people on the Dion system. Talked about the supermajority, getting as many, so then that we could then dissolve Parliament and hold a plebiscite election, etc. So it's all about working on a strategy, working on a message that people are going to relate to. So we've got a campaign team set up, and we're going to be having regular meetings just now, just working out, leaflet designs, messaging on leaflets, etc. Obviously, then there's the vetting process for any members that are wanting to come forward and be a candidate. We already do have candidates that are ready to go, because they were vetted just before the general election, and because the general election was kind of sprung upon us, then we as a party, we were ready to go. We had the leaflets, except we were ready to go. But some of the candidates, because of the cost of a general election, we just didn't have the time to do a proper crowdfunder for them all. So, so long as they don't do anything naughty in the meantime, then we did agree. We spoke to them, and we agreed that if they just, again, the general election wasn't our election. We were standing on abstention anyway. We weren't going to be taking our seats anyway. So we did agree that if you didn't stand this time round, then as long as you don't do anything untoward that goes against our vetting process and our constitution, etc., then they're ready to stand next year. So we do already have candidates in the wing ready to go. So, and again, it's all about just getting them prepared, and then hopefully, I've been doing some work with Alan Petrie and Eva Comrie from Indie for Indie on the Oath campaign. So again, I'm hoping that might get a wee bit more momentum, that people are actually starting to understand about the oath that we're forced to take within Holyrood. I know it's a devolved Parliament, but we are sovereign Scots. We should be taking an oath to the people of Scotland. So, the three of us have been involved with that campaign, and we've got things coming up in the pipeline regarding that. So again, I can't say too much about that just now, but that will come in a matter of a couple of months, hopefully. And again, that will be part of the campaign, that people will actually see that we're actually not going to be starting, if when we get elected into Parliament, and that I'm talking about the Indie for Indian, ISP, etc. That we're not going to start our parliamentary term on a lie, because giving an oath to something that you don't believe in, you're lying.
It's not a good foundation,
and
is
it's
it?
not a good foundation to start, and I think that's actually still, and again, I think that's actually really important, that people are fed up with politicians, and they class them as liars, and they're just in it for themselves, etc. But you can't really tar everybody with the same brush. There's good elected members in all political parties. Sadly, quite a few ruin it for everybody else. But I think it's really important that we show that I actually are going to be elected representatives within your parliament that are going to stand up for their morals and their principles, and actually stand up for the people of Scotland. And again, I think when people see that you've been either, you've done a campaign, whatever it might well be, not necessarily just Freeports, but as I say, like Save Loch Lomond, etc. So there's lots of things. If you put your head above the parapet and you fought, then they know that you're going to do that when you're in Parliament. And I think that's actually really, really important. So it's a busy time. You say we've got 14 months or so now, and it's just going to fly by. It's going to fly by, because we are going to be really, really busy making sure that we're all organised. Can
I ask you about, maybe it's just my experience of hustings up this neck of the woods. They've not been great. So we've organised a couple of hustings ourselves sometimes. We were a friend or whatever, and we did it last time. Our local chamber, Loch Arbor Chamber Commerce, they had the last one, the last general election. They literally had just like 4 subjects you could talk about, and it was like, that was just, like really annoyed me. This is just, to me, this is not acceptable, acceptable at all. So what is your experience of hustings and stuff? Because this is always something I feel that, I don't know, that there's not as much interest in it anymore, and it certainly doesn't have the clout it does. And even when we have had a decent hustings here and stuff, the mainstream media and everything drowns out that hustings, so you might get completely different experience or an understanding of a candidate and stuff. But so once again, so what do you think about these hustings and stuff? So would this be part of the ISP's program? Are they going to try and encourage one?
I would be encouraging any of my candidates that are standing to attend any of the hustings. They can be quite daunting, because again, sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get asked. But as I always say, you can't know everything about everything, and if you don't know something, again, honesty comes across. The best policy is honesty, and say, I really don't know too much about that. I wouldn't want to give you misinformation. Could I possibly take your details, and I'll look into it and get back to you? And that actually shows that somebody's actually listening to you, and is willing to go out their way after the meeting and spend a bit of time and actually find out and then get back to them. And I think that's actually really, really important, that you're actually showing a different dynamic to politics. Now, in 2022, at the local elections that I stood in my area, I had one hustings that I went to, and there was a few people. There was Labour, there was myself, there was the Greens, there was another couple of people, but the SNP, etc. didn't show up. But it was actually a really, really good. It was actually a really good meeting. There was quite a lot of people turned up for a local council election. It was actually fairly well attended. But then when I stood in the Rutherglen by-election, I'd done two hustings. I'd done one regarding women's rights that was put on by a women's group, and that was actually a really good meeting. I was the only female there amongst, I think, another four or five men. But again, that actually showed the really what women that come into politics are up against, because that's about the ratio, like 1 to every 4 or 5 men in politics.
That's pretty. I didn't realise it was that bad. That is bad. Even at the local level.
Yeah, well, it's starting to increase a wee bit, but it's still quite low for women, and coming into politics. And to be fair, I'm not actually really surprised at the amount of abuse and everything that goes on with politics. It's not an easy gig. If anybody thinks this is an easy gig, they've got another thing coming.
Obviously, men are better at lying than women.
Well, the thing that Hustings was actually, I mean, it was really good, even though it was about women's issues. But there was a couple of men that that were willing to listen. One man from Reform, he stormed off in a strop, so it was actually quite funny. But then, the local radio station, they held a hustings that was live on their radio programme, and there was 14 candidates that were in the Rutherglen by-election. There was quite a lot of us, and I think about maybe 12 of us were there that night. And so again, that was actually really good, because we really didn't know what we were going to get asked. And sadly, when it came to asking a few questions, I was the only one that was talking about things like direct democracy. And again, they were talking about money that was coming. You got £20 million into your local council. What would you do with this extra £20 million? That was they were referring to the levelling up deals, like these city growth deals, etc., the levelling up project that Michael Gove started. But not one of the main contenders from the bigger parties. They were all talking about what they would spend this money on, right? But then when it came to me, I said, well, it's not actually the money that I'm thinking about spending. It's actually the money that I'm worried about that's getting taken away from the community because of like the Freeports and the special economic zones. And they all just kind of looked as if, what's she talking about? Not one person. So
it's
again,
really interesting.
And again, even like the likes of talking about, they're talking about people like living in poverty and what were you going to do to help people like come out of poverty, etc. And not one of them. I was the only one that talked about, looking into universal basic income or something different. And I just thought, we're completely talking on different wavelengths here. So husbands have actually been really good to actually set aside who are just going to speak the party line and just speak what they've been basically told to do with their manifesto, or actually people that are going to then speak out for their community. And it's actually really important that but I think it's actually really important you go and you actually get that chance to speak, whether you get to ask their questions, but even after the hustings, you can go over and speak to the candidates, on a one-to-one. And I think that's actually really, really important. But again, in the general election, when it came to the general election in July, I did not get, believe it or not, I didn't get invited to any hustings. And it was only after the election that I found out that there had been 2 hustings that had been set up. And there was only, now in hustings, every candidate should get an invitation, whether they decide to turn up is, for them to decide whether they're going to attend or not. There was only the 4 main parties were invited to the hustings in this area that I should have been attending. And I never knew anything about them. I didn't get an invitation. And obviously the other candidates never. It was only the 4 main parties.
Well, we've seen this thing up here. This is one of the reasons why we've organised a couple of hustings for simple reasons like that as well. I mean, one thing I started off a couple of weeks ago. I wrote to every councillor in Loch Arbor. There's 7. There's two wards, and I managed to get one from each. One might be joining or whatever at a later date or whatever. But I set up my content first, and I said, this is I'm not going to be here to like push back and be confrontational with you or something. I really want you to talk about the issues that you're getting, emails you're getting, and I'll give you a few that some people are saying. But I'm not going to be, challenging you so much or giving people and stuff. We'll put your name up there, and people can get in contact with you about these issues and stuff. I don't need to be the one there in the middle to do it. And so, like, to me, it's like, even if it's only a couple of hundred people are watching it, and even if you only get 20 people who start writing off some emails to their MPs or to their councillors rather, or something, at least it's doing something. And then the councillors are on there, because like you said, not all councillors or MPs are something all bad.
No,
Do you know what I mean? Like, most people, I think most people are good people. There might
yeah.
be difficult situations and stuff like that. And like you said, it's also for learning as well. By doing this and getting involved with debates and conversations and stuff, then it gives you more confidence to move and stuff like this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel quite intimidated asking an elected, because they're an elected representative. Okay, I call them elected representatives because that's what they're there to do.
Yeah.
They're there to. I hate the word politician because it comes with such a negative.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to say elected representative because again, I try to look on the positives that I would hope that they would be there to represent me. But again, so many people just now, one, they still don't know about our voting system for the Scottish election, which, again, that'll be one of our big campaigns, is to, to reaffirm like how you use your vote properly and wisely.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of people still don't know the difference between what a role of a councillor to an MSP to an MP actually is, or
Yeah.
who do they write to for a particular issue that's happening within either their household or their local community. And again, what you were saying there, again, it's all about working out who's actually part of the council, your local councillors, who are the ones that are actually going to help you out. So, for example, if you've got an issue, and I do this with my dad as well, if there's an issue in his local area, whether it's the recycling or a crossing or flooding or litter or whatever it is, if it's something that needs addressed, I then write the email to, I think my dad's got 3 councillors, so I would write to the 3 councillors. I'm not just going to say I'm only going to write to the one that's an independent supporting councillor.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So I write to all 3 of them, and then I'll see who actually comes back. And believe it or not, it's actually there's one councillor that has been, and I will say he has been so good, and he's a Labour councillor, and he's now on his 2nd term because he was there before, and then he got re-elected in 2022.
Good.
But he's actually been really, really good. When I've asked him, given him an issue, a problem, he's been right on it, and it's probably been fixed within a day or a couple of days.
That's impressive. That's really good.
But this is what I'm saying, Eddie. It's actually finding out who is actually going to represent you. And the way you do it is writing to all the ones that are that are on your ward or part of your constituency, and see who does respond to you. It's a bit like the Freeports and a bit like what you're saying, but it's a bit like the Freeports to say, I write hundreds, we write hundreds of emails to our local representatives, like the Glasgow SEZ meeting that we had in October of last year. There was 8 local councils involved in the Glasgow SEZ, so it's a huge area. So there was just too many, so to actually write to one person taking on that role. So there was a couple of us that divided. Let's say you do those 4 councils. But it was nearly 400 councillors that we wrote to.
Jeez.
And guess what? I don't even think one council. Well, I wasn't there. I was actually in hospital at the time. But I don't even think a couple of councillors even turned out of all, and we'll get a couple of responses saying, oh, sorry, there's a by-election on, or sorry, that's our, we can't attend. But the majority of them, one, they don't respond to you, even acknowledging your email, and they don't attend. So that this is where it's really important that people find out who your local councillor is, know who your MSP is, know who your MP is, and see who is the one, who are the ones that are going to come out and actually respond to you and actually do the job that they've been elected to do.
Can I just ask you this? So roughly 400 emails about the special economic zone in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, that would signify to me that, like they've got a little alert thing there going, special economics mode, you're not allowed, don't reply.
It's a very nice, it's a very welcoming email that we send out. We're looking for their responses. But I get, yes, as I say, we split it. Myself and another colleague, we split the emails because it was just too much for one person to do, and it takes a lot of hours to copy and paste all the emails, and etc. etc. So it's a lot of work that goes on in the background. It's not just all about holding and coming on the likes of podcasts or doing social media. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background. But yeah, I know that I only got probably maybe a half a dozen replies out of all the ones that I sent, and again, my colleague was roughly about the same. But then what you talked about earlier on about the media. So I usually send out emails to invite journalists, social media people, anybody that's on social media that that we follow, and nobody turns up to like you really should come over, come to the meeting, speak to the people that are attending, get their views, interview them. Record, we're happy for you to record the meeting, etc., get people's opinions. No, nothing, absolutely nothing. And you're just like, really? So, but we just have to keep doing what
we have to keep going.
Yeah. The traction is starting to happen. People are getting more aware, and we just have to keep doing, because again, if we don't, they win. And
well, I often find as well, I mean, it may be a slow process forward, but there will come a time, and especially when new people, and you win hearts and minds, and when more people come along, it's always, I know these people are always genuinely happy and contented when they come along and they realize how much work other people have done before them. So they can see that and then move on with it. So, all this incremental stuff to me is just really valid, and it just helps when other people join, because you can go, oh wow, there really has been some organization and a lot of work done here, and
it's all about spreading the word as well. So we have people coming to like the meetings or whatever, and then they go and say, oh, you'll never guess what I found out, or they take away we done a stall in Glasgow's George Square at the Hope Over Fear rally last year, and we had printed out loads of stuff, laminated lots of information for people to take away with them. We even had a tin of chocolates to entice. I'm only joking. We didn't have to entice anybody. We were actually probably the busiest stall. We never stopped for the couple of hours that we were there. People were really interested in what was going on. They wanted to take information away with them. They came and they spoke to us, and having quite lengthy conversations. And it is quite upsetting sometimes when you see people getting quite angry and quite upset about it. But they have to know the facts. They need to know what's going on. And then so they would then take away the information, whether it's from a stall that we're doing or a public meeting, and then they go and say, oh, but have you heard about this? I didn't know about that. And that's how the word starts to spread. And as I say, that's why next year it really should be a protest vote to save Scotland. It has to be about saving Scotland. It has to be about.
I like that idea, because it really has to
be about the stoppage of our asset stripping, and it has to be about the people of Scotland taking control and stopping this privatisation and getting Scotland back to public ownership, and actually us owning the land and owning everything in Scotland like it should be. So it really should be a protest vote about saving Scotland. So that's let's everybody get galvanised now. Stop the apathy. We have to actually start to get on the streets again. We have to start doing all the stalls. We have to get back to that momentum that we had in 2014, and maybe even more so. We have to start getting everybody together. We have to get people talking. We have to get the communities out and about. It's really, really important. We can't let over 1 million votes go to waste like what happened in 2021. That can't be allowed to happen again. You know, we can't allow that anymore. We need people in that parliament that are actually going to speak up and actually fight for Scotland.
That's great, Colette. I think we can finish up now. Unless there's anything else you want to add. All I would like to add is thanks again, because I mean, I know at least a rough idea of the amount of work that you do, and I'm glad that you do. I'm glad there is people like you out there who are actually doing a lot of work, and it's just unpaid, unappreciated sometimes. But you know yourself, you're doing what you think is the right thing, and that's it. So brilliant.
Yeah. So we'll end
Thank
up
you so much.
we'll end on a positive. There are still good people that are willing to fight for the people of Scotland out there, and what we're asking now is for them to give us the support for next year, and actually get involved now in politics, and actually get the right people in Parliament that are going to speak up for you and for the country. So let's stay on a positive from now on.
Yep, great stuff. And look, here's my dog. He always sneaks in at a podcast at some point, don't you, Fergie? He's got in the door there. He's managed to open up.
Oh,
say hello.
Oh, my dog's fast asleep in her bed.
Right, Colette. I'll say ta-ta and thank you for everybody for joining us today. And hopefully we'll get to see you soon, Colette. You're honestly anytime. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And certainly,
Thank
you know,
for
at least
having me.
14 months go on, and yeah, just keeping everybody informed, because like you said, we've all got a job to do.
We do.
Some of us do more than others, and you know, but that's just the way it is.
Teamwork, Eddie. It's teamwork.
It's teamwork.
You know,
Yes,
teamwork.
it is.
You know, we do what you know. Some people can do more than others, but every little bit matters. And
exactly. Just open your eyes. Just people open your eyes, and yeah, don't close your eyes.
No, don't put your head under the duvet and
don't put it under the duvet.
No, don't do that. No. But thank you very much for having me, Eddie. It's nice seeing you again.
No, brilliant. No, honestly, what a real pleasure. Thank you very much, Colette. And I'll say good night. Good night to everybody.